Hi and welcome to this presentation about how to write a better ICO white paper. So if you want to know how to write a better ICO white paper, first let's take a look at what makes a good white paper. And I could talk for ages about my personal opinion on this, but in the end all that matters are data, and data is exactly what on this subject. We at Intellicore Press have evaluated 7 of the most successful ICOs of the last couple of years, from Kick ICO to Syrian Labs. They raised between 25 million US dollars and 157 million. And of course, if you want to get an unbiased view of the qualities that a good and successful ICO white paper has, then there is no other way than taking the suboptimal into account as well. And luckily, we have quite a lot of experience with this. We at Intellicore Press have worked on more than 20 white paper projects in the last years, and our clients ask us to join the projects in practically every stage, from the planning stage to the stage in which there is almost a complete white paper with lots of information and data, but the client feels that something is missing. And therefore, we have seen a very wide variety of white papers, and based on this, all this data, we have extracted the key features and the most common mistakes that people, beginners and non-professional white paper writers make when writing their ICO white paper. So let's take a closer look at them. What are the 5 most common mistakes in white paper writing? The first mistake is that people fail to get to the point quickly. Fact is, it's in our human nature that we want to tell a story from the chronological beginning to the end. However, that is not the way to approach a white paper project. You are not writing for a layman audience, you are writing for ICO investors who in most cases have invested in other projects before. They are well familiar with everything surrounding Bitcoin, Ethereum, the history of blockchain, pros and cons of smart contracts. And even if some of these facts are relevant to your project, don't start with them. Start with the features of your project that are most important to investors, because many of them, you can be quite certain, will stop reading after 2 or 3 pages, and if you start boring them right from the beginning, they will stop reading even sooner than that. Here's a good example of how to do it properly. This is from the status white paper, and as you see here, they are explaining in the very first sentence what their project is about, which is something that an astonishing number of white papers fail to do. You can read for 5 pages, 10 pages, 15 pages and wait for the explanation what the project is all about, but it's just not there. This is different. They start with a definition of the project in just 1 sentence. Then they add a few details that are relevant about their platform and technology. And in the end, this is also a good idea. At the end of the executive summary, they give a few key points about their ICO. This is another good example from the Vox white paper. Very early on in the paper, they give information about the market gap that they are addressing, and this is indeed one of the most important things that investors will evaluate about an ICO. Which leads me straight to, you definitely need to explain your place in the industry. This is often not something that comes naturally to, especially to developers. Developers and other technical people, hackers, engineers, they sometimes vanish into their basement for 5 years, and when they reappear, they have invented some cool new technology or product, but nobody quite knows what to do with it. And this may be all right when you are in the beginning stages of your startup, but don't do this in your white paper. In your white paper, you can never lose sight of the market gap that you are addressing, because this is extremely relevant to your investors. They want to know that there is a market for your product. You don't need to prove or show that you are the only one with this idea, or even the first one. Quite the opposite. If there's already some competition in the market, it just shows that there is a real market need for what you're doing. You just need to show what you are doing differently and why your approach is better. This is a good example from the 10x white paper. As you see here, you don't have to go on for pages and pages about this. You can summarize it nicely in a table or a couple of tables, and maybe some explanatory text. The next important thing is, especially if you are developing a platform in your startup, then you often tend to focus on how to acquire users, how to grow your user base, etc. And while this is important, the number of users in itself is not something that will earn you any money, and therefore it's not that relevant to investors. You need to show them that you have a real source of revenue as concretely as possible. In short, if there is no mechanism to generate revenue, then there's no business. And, this is a good example of how to do it. It's from the Kick ICO white paper. And in fact, they are solving two problems in one here. With this text and diagram, they are showing their revenue source. They earn a 4% commission, and at the same time they are demonstrating why this makes them more efficient and more attractive than their competitors. Another important thing to do is to build trust with the investors in a way that you show them what you're going to do with the funds. Nobody really wants to sponsor your next vacation in the Caribbean, that's for sure, but on the other hand, you also don't have to be too modest about the share that you are going to take for yourself and your team, because you still want to be realistic. No one's going to believe you if you're saying you're doing all of this just for altruistic reasons, except if you really do. This is a good example from the status white paper, and in fact the figure they give here, 20% of funds for the development team, that's a good ballpark figure that you will find in many serious ICO white papers. However, don't forget to discuss this with your lawyer, which is, by the way, important for all of the things that I'm discussing here. So talking about trust, There's a section that's possibly even more important to build trust with your investors. This is definitely a hard problem. If you've never met your investors, you need to find a way to create trust in yourself and your team as human beings, and a solid team section is the way to go. Small founding teams often go to remote freelancing websites to find other team members and specialists, for example, developers or marketing specialists. So if your team is not all in one place, you will probably ask your team members to send you their bios and their photos, and then you are tempted to copy and paste them all together and just call the team section finished. Don't do that. You need someone in the end to go through all the bios and give them a consistent voice. Otherwise, you will have some bios that consist of only one sentence, and other bios in which the author is talking at length about their work history and their favorite pastimes and how they named their dog, etc., which is not in itself a problem, but all bios should look and read somewhat consistent. Also, if you have no convenient way to collect high quality photos from all of your team members, for example, if you are not all in one place, then it's also an option to just leave out the photos altogether. However, you still absolutely need to link to your team members' social media profiles. And don't forget to check that all of them have included your project as the most recent and most important of projects. So to make your lives a bit easier when you're writing your ICO white paper, we have created a product to help you with that. That's our ultimate blockchain white paper template and guide, which consists of two parts. The first part is an ebook that will guide you through all the things that I have just discussed and much, much more, and of course in much higher detail than I can do it here in a short presentation. That's the first part. And the second part, a template that allows you to just open it, read through the questions that we are asking, fill them out, answer them, and then you have a well-structured brain dump, which is almost a finished white paper. You can go over this and polish it a bit, and this way you will have made sure that the first thing that you haven't forgotten anything, and the second thing that the white paper will not look imbalanced, like it was written by a specialist who focused on his or her favorite topic. For example, a white paper written by developers will often go on at length about the about the cool technological features of the platform, but will neglect the business aspects. And on the other hand, a white paper written by a business person will maybe read like a traditional business plan, but will neglect to discuss the technology and tokenomics. Thank you for listening, and I'd be happy to meet you via email or on our website. And we are always looking forward to getting your comments and questions about our services and products, and of course, your success stories. Thank you.